around the world to see the first preview, truly from around the world. It was unreal and incredible. But so I remember I was backstage and I was getting warmed up to do You Ought to Know, and it kind of hit me that many of these people had been listening to her deeply iconic version of it for almost 25 years, and I was about to do it in a very different way. Because I think so much of finding how to do that song was how to keep it grounded in the story, and how to build the song in a way that I can actually do as an actor, playing this character and not just doing it in a concert. So it was scary, that first moment of not knowing how people would feel about us taking this extremely famous song and doing it in quite a different way. But it's been so embraced by people and by our fans of the show, and that's been really humbling and gratifying. And so I think the creative team helped us find that kind of sweet spot of honoring what Alanis has always done with the song, and also giving our audience a new way to experience it, which is very cool.
So, Sean and Derek, I'm very curious. I've been wondering this ever since I saw the show. So much of this music is identified from a female singer-songwriter kind of perspective, and even as a queer man myself, like, I love it for that reason. It's like this woman's voice, and but you guys actually have these lyrics and these songs in your voice and your perspective, and often they're songs that were, you know, they're sung by a woman. So how does that work for you, and how did you kind of deal and grapple with that?
I can go first. Yeah, I think I think what's special about Alanis's music is that a lot of them are written. She deals with a lot of universal themes that kind of bridge the gap between gender and sex. I think a lot of her subject matter and her themes relate to men and women, and whoever sings it, you just have to bring truth to that theme and that idea of what the song is about. So, and I'll piggyback on some of what Lauren had said too. Is it's been a team effort, kind of rebranding these songs in a way, and I think Tom Kitt's beautiful orchestrations and new arrangements for these songs, and along with Diablo Cody's book, has helped us so much. And you attack the show and you attack your character just like you would any material. It's a story that you're telling. It's a character that you're trying to illustrate, and you just try to do. We try to make Alanis proud and drive those themes forward in what we're telling. So that's our responsibility as actors, to kind of stay on track with that and then bring new meaning to the songs. And so with that in mind, it made it easy and kind of like I've said before, a cool privilege and a responsibility to us to honor the song yet honor the character. And it's been a cool process. It's been cool to see people's response to that, because they're used to hearing it. And Alanis has also said she's so used to hearing it, sung by a woman, that it's really cool to hear these male voices singing it. And so we're very lucky to do that.
Yeah, it was an extremely collaborative process. So they were so lovely. The creative team was so lovely and gracious about listening to us. If it ever felt wedged in or shoehorned into a moment. So in the beginning, I would say that I did feel a little bit of pressure. Like, what is this going to be like? This song in a male voice, or any of these songs in a male voice. I remember hearing Alanis tell a story about, and Diablo Cody telling the story about how you had mentioned that she listened to the album when she was asked to take a stab at writing the book, and she keyed into Mary Jane. She knew right away that was the main character of the show, and that it would be sung by her husband. And that was the starting point for this story. And it really truly is, like Derek said, what it has grown into is that I get to the moments in the show and I don't think about it anymore. It just feels very organic, and it really truly is such a good book, and the music is so metaphorical and beautifully written that it just feels like you're doing a musical, which is how it should, you know. But yeah, I also, like Elizabeth said, I felt a little bit of freedom in it because I knew it was already so different with a man singing it that I didn't feel like I needed to do any kind of homage to Alanis. And in fact, sometimes it feels like freedom because I was like, oh, I can kind of do a little Alanisism on this, and it's gonna still sound like me, but you know, I know my favorite one is "My Mother Could." Totally like hear her in my mind every time, and So Unsexy, and I love that. I loved it.
Whereas I have to leave my Alanis,
Right.
my Alanis version of "You Ought to Know" to just me doing it by myself in my room when it's
Right.
when I.
But you know what I
think
mean?
about
Like
it,
no matter
yeah.
what I do, it's not gonna sound like Alanis.
Don't say that.
And another thing that, sorry, just one more thing that has helped with, and I think a lot of so-called jukebox musicals have like, it becomes all about the music and honoring the artists that the show is about, so that the setups of the songs end up being like, you know, the whole thing ends up being, how are we gonna fit this song in here? How are we gonna fit the song in here? This is what this artist is known for, so we have to put it here. But we've been helped out a lot. I feel like it's been easy to integrate these songs into the show because of how seamless Diablo Cody has kind of placed them. The transitions into the song feel very organic and very real, so it's easy to kind of get into the song as our characters, not feel like we have to perform them as the song that Alanis wrote. You know, now we've taken a new ownership of them in a way.
So, you know, you guys are obviously some of the main leads here on stage, but there's a whole other part of the cast. And I believe you think of the ensemble as the conscience, is what Diane and you guys have all told me.
Correct.
So I'm curious about how that developed and how you kind of work with this chorus of voices and bodies and how they work with you in those moments.
I mean, our ensemble is incredible. So amazing. Every single one of them is this really special, unique, extraordinary talent, like ball of energy. It's awesome. But I think for all of us working on the piece, the creative team and the actors as well, like it became very clear early on that a lot of Alanis's lyrics are quite cerebral and have like a bigger concept, which is really unique, I think, for pop music writing. A lot, you know, because her music also manages to be quite catchy. But so I think that the idea that the greater good, the bigger version of humanity that is beyond these individual characters that we're also following was just present in the room by having this music be being done. And so I think that is how that sort of Greek chorus consciousness came about. But it also became clear, I think, to most of us that in a lot of our individual lyrics, it made more sense that it was like an inner monologue or like a soliloquy, something that is not necessarily lyrics you would say to someone, which is usually the case in music theater. And so to me, that really opens it up too, because, you know, the whole idea of soliloquy, like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to God? Are you talking to the universe? You know, what is that? And so for me, that also is, like, we're in constant connection with this sort of bigger picture.
I think I agree with Elizabeth wholeheartedly. The conscience is, in my opinion, the most important part of the show. My favorite moment in the show is Wake Up, and that's the moment. It's for those of you who see the show, you know what I'm talking about. It's my favorite moment in the show. You see the principal characters were being moved around on these giant panels, and we see members of the conscience physicalizing. That's a word. Putting it into their bodies, what we're feeling, and you see these moments of these beautiful, beautiful dancers throwing themselves around in the same way that the principals are sort of dealing with themselves. It's in the process of putting the show together, it was clear that each principal would have a sort of body double. We see it in, especially with MJ's track with Elizabeth and Heather Lang, who is simply iconic. It was here in Predator 2, and yeah, it's great to have these dancers sort of, again, physicalize what the principals are feeling when they can't, because like Elizabeth said, so much of Alanis's music is internal. To me, it feels like it's, like Elizabeth says, something that isn't really said out loud, but it's something that's felt. And so getting to see it actually like physically and primally and viscerally, all words, and hope are actually words, it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. It makes it really, really clear, and it draws the audience in, and it allows them to truly, absolutely see what the character is feeling instead of guessing. It eliminates that option of guessing. It makes it clear, and it's just a testament to our choreographer, City Larby, and Diablo and Alanis, and it's just, it's magic.
I think too, a lot of what I think about with how our ensemble and our conscience works in the show, and one of the many special things that I think our show does particularly well is that, I don't know, I guess in musical theater, perhaps the traditional view of an ensemble is like this monolith of tap dancing people, you know, that sort of all like wear the same costume and are behind whoever is singing the lead number and all this stuff. And, you know, I think that what Diane, particularly as our leader with the show, really actively sought is to have each member of our ensemble be a really unique, energetic, powerful presence on stage. And so with that, rather than this kind of concept of like, oh, well, the ensemble comes in to like dance more behind people, or we all do the same things, it's actually like we have this world that's created by these incredibly special performers who all are deeply singular people, and that comes across on stage. And so I think finding that balance of having these people who are completely singular and also create this you know, world that is like a unit of our consciousness, I think is really special to see on a Broadway stage. And it pushes, to me, I think it pushes back against this notion that the ensemble is like a different kind of thing, that the, like for us it's really, we are an ensemble show, and so we are part of the ensemble, and I hope to see more of that on Broadway stages, because, you know, it's just everybody is a deeply special singular performer in our company, and there's no reason that perspective on how a Broadway musical should work can't be done in other shows.
Woo!
You guys mentioned working with Heather, and I'm curious about working with Larby, the choreographer. I'm not going to try his whole name, but I mean, Diane had told me that the uninvited moment sort of happened spontaneously one night, late on a rehearsal during development, like some ratty couch, and you guys started realizing that, you know, there was this doppelganger kind of idea, and you guys kind of figured. Tell us if did that happen?
The story is true. Yeah, you know, Diane is tireless in her exploration of creative moments, and so it was one of those things where it was like we were running out of time before we were doing this presentation of the lab, and so they said, you know, can you just like stay after rehearsal? We just want to kind of like see what we have here with this number. And I said, sure, okay. And Heather had been working with Larby, City Larby Tricari, and Larby had very specific ideas of the movement that she should do, but he is also like extremely malleable and loves to see like what you as an artist bring to something. So I think he's very interested in your own personal version of that. So I think he had specific choreography ideas for her, but then it really became something that she also created. And so they kind of were like, Elizabeth, just sit on this couch and let's like see what happens. And they did. They turned all the lights off, and I can't remember if it was like someone's like iPhone like flashlight or something. They really wanted to like create the mood, which I appreciate. I mean, it makes me feel like a bad actor when you're like, I can't do it until I'm in the costume. But it like really did help because it is such a specifically like spooky moment that it felt like safe to be exploring such a like unabashedly like dark private moment in a room that was like quite private and quite dark.
And so you were kind of figuring out his hip hop, whatever style.
Yes. Believe it or not, I consider myself a strong mover.
Strong mover.
And so when I read into Larby's massive history of choreographing and knowing that he choreographed ape shit for the Carters, I was like, so I'm gonna be doing what now exactly? And Unprodigal is such an important moment for Frankie. It's the moment where she is finally allowed to express herself in a way that isn't whitewashed, in a way that just feels truthful and fierce as hell. And a lot of Unprodigal for me was getting out of my own head and realizing that this is not about me and how I judge myself when I move. It's about Frankie expressing herself, and the way that she expresses herself is through movement, it's through action. She's less of a talker and a lot more of a doer, and that gets her in trouble sometimes. And I think exploring that side of choreography and exploring that sort of movement in my body and in my person was really, really freeing. Because Larby is so passionate, he's so ready to give of himself to make sure that someone else feels supported, and actually doing the choreography and doing it with the ensemble and feeling a lot of support behind me, and then at the end getting lifted up and getting to scream my face off. It's really, really awesome. And for Frankie, it's the feeling of unoppression. That's what she's searching for. That's what she's been looking for since the beginning. It's unoppression, deliverance, justice. She just wants something to hold on to. And that moment, I think she explores the idea of holding on to herself, instead of looking to other people and looking to other actions and activist movements. It's the moment where she looks into herself and say, I am enough on my own. I don't need Greenport or Connecticut. I don't need all of this. I can just find my own on my own way. And that was something that Celia is still learning how to do. And so having the opportunity to sort of step out of myself and step into Frankie and step into the idea of leaning onto oneself and moving and expressing and just, it's awesome. It's awesome.
So,
I just wanted to piggyback on that. That Larby was also just so integral in getting back to the conscience idea in the show. He was so integral in figuring out how that would work physically on the stage, emotionally on the stage. There was so much work that was done that wasn't even necessarily specifically dance. It was about incorporating truly a true Greek chorus into these pivotal moments in all of these characters' lives, and the creative staff was so adamant about them being true participants in the story, as opposed to just like, you know, like we were saying, just an ensemble. He's incredible. He's so emotionally driven in everything that he does that it was incredible to work with him.
The only thing I'll add to that, as someone who did the full conscience track at ART, and was in all of those rooms when we were, like, also I will say, I too would consider myself a strong mover with many years of dance experience still. But when you're doing Unprodigal Daughter next to Ebony, I mean, it's like cruel and unusual punishment to have to do that on stage. But it was really, really a cool experience to get to do that choreography, which, by the way, after my dance call, I called my reps and I was like, I really thought I had it. But they just saw me dance and we had to do the hand in my pocket claps and like, I mean, it was a disaster for me personally. Thankfully that was overlooked. But I will say, like, it just, our ensemble, the way that Conscience, every single one of them has a specific intent, every single person, and Larby creating this entire world, moments that were cut, like we were in the closet and so unsexy at a point, and like there's just all these brilliant moments that we sort of workshopped and that maybe didn't even make it into the show, but I personally am just so deeply grateful that sort of to have that opportunity learning all of his choreography and all of that, because he's a true mastermind, and I doubt this will be his last Broadway show, even though it's his first, which is insane.
Wow. I just want to comment on that too. I remember that time and watching, it was so beautiful. I remember watching the actors helping one another, because some people in our ensemble specifically are like insanely amazing singers, but like dance feels not as strong for them, and you know, vice versa. And so I just remember like people being like, Ebony, yes, let's work on this vocal part, and then people being like, Catherine, yeah, let's go over that again.
Needed a lot of help.
You know, and it was just like, it was really cool to see that like shared artistry and respect for each other, and like, this is my weaker point, this is my stronger point, let's lean on each other and get there together. You know, because I think so many people picture like the industry and the business of Broadway being so competitive and cutthroat, and you know, you got to be the best if you're going to get into the room, and this was really so human and really, really awesome to witness and to be a part of a company that is like that for each other.
Yeah, it's a lot of what they've been saying. I would just say, add to everything, that C.D. Larby is like an expert in body language, and that is something that in our scenes and through our characters, he was so instrumental in helping us find that emotion, and going back to the Conscience and what him and Diane built, and how they use the Conscience throughout the show. Body language and human interaction is such a huge theme and an important factor to our show. And I think Larby was so instrumental in kind of sculpting that and using the Conscience in a way, you know, because we're all driven to make decisions through our inner conscience, and to see that physicalized on stage, to have these literal forces pushing our characters in either direction and helping them make their decisions. Larby was just kind of invaluable when it came to all of that, and helping us as actors understand that relationship between us and the Conscience that was constantly surrounding us and influencing us.
So I think we're going to take some questions in a few minutes, but first I have a question which I know can be delicate, and so I want to, and you don't know what it is, but I see a lot of shows. I see everything on Broadway, off Broadway, and one of the things that I basically almost gave up recently was over the fact that there were so many things trying to target a teenage audience that felt sort of juvenile, that felt like it was sort of playing to the teen without actually respecting a young person. And what I really loved about this show is that even though it is a very youthful cast, it's a very, you know, it has a lot of youthful people in it, it still felt adult, it felt mature, and it felt like it was respecting these very powerful themes. And I wondered what you guys thought about that, about, you know, like, some people could say, like, this is a PG-13 or almost rated R type thing, right? But I enjoyed that. So what do you think about that, about this sort of trying to pander maybe to a younger audience? Since I think there are many young people out here and maybe have...
Yeah, I think, so I am youthful. I'm young in normal standards. I just happen to be in a little triangle with two babies.
Okay.
But I think that I do think that there is a lot of, there's a feeling of wanting to protect teenagers, I think, and to protect teenagers in art forms. And I honestly think that it is a twofold thing of maybe forgetting how much we knew and what we dealt with when we were a teenager. And also, I think maybe not understanding how much it has changed and what it is like to be a teenager in the last 5 and 10 years. And so I think, to me, I have no doubt that everything that we talk about in the show is not news to any teenager who comes to see it. It's not like a what? This occurs, you know? Like, I think it's very, and not only that, but it is something that I think a significant portion of teenagers today, particularly in our country, are actively dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And so I think it is, while perhaps unconscious, and certainly well-intended, but it is a certain kind of disrespect to not think that a teenage audience is mature enough, or not only mature enough, but not craving an opportunity to share this part of their lives through the art form that they love. So I'm very proud of our show for doing that.
Woo! I think as a teenager, I completely agree with what Lauren is saying. Nothing that happens in the show is new. It's like Lauren said, it's not news to anyone. And I think the reason why Jagged is being received so well is because it's honest. And the reason why shows like Euphoria and Sex Education are doing so well is because it's allowing people to just talk about it. Because there's no one benefits from being left out of the conversation. No one benefits. Like the moment like Sean said, the moment we start communicating is the moment things get a lot easier. And so telling the truth and saying this is something that teenagers are actually dealing with, and instead of denying the idea of like, oh, teenagers are just going to school and doing their homework and exams. And it's like, teen life is a lot more nuanced than art sometimes allows it to be. And it's dark and it's scary. The world we're living in right now is really, really scary. And I think denying that truth isn't helping anyone. And so a lot of the collaboration, especially for Frankie's story, since the production team didn't include anyone who was dark-skinned, and that's a problem within itself, I think the fact that I was asked, is this truthful? Does this feel right? How do you feel about it? And being able to like share my truth and share my experience in a room where I felt safe to do so is incredibly important. And conversations that we've had as a cast and as a company, as a community, of saying, this is what's going on, this is what we're gonna talk about, this is how we're gonna do it, and people being able to step forward and speak on their own experiences and speak on behalf of themselves instead of having someone else tell them what their story is, I think was such an incredibly important part of this whole process. Especially for me, being a Black woman telling a Black girl's story, being able to say, this is actually what's going on, instead of having someone else who's not sharing my experience tell me what I am to do and tell me what I am to say and tell me how I am to feel. I think being able to go in and say, this is actually what's going on, and having someone receive it and put it into the story exactly how I expressed it, and it not being altered and switched around and changed up to make it more palatable and make it easier to receive for people who don't share my experience. I think that was something that really, really drew me to this process. It was the idea of like, you're gonna be able to tell the truth about your experience in front of a whole bunch of people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who may not know what you're going through. That was something that put a fire in my belly. That was like, great, I get 2.5 hours to tell the truth. What am I gonna say? And that was so, so cool and super important. And I'm so super, super, super duper grateful, because not a lot of us have that option.
Should be an indication that the entire answer from a real life teenager should be a very clear indication of why we can be telling these kind of stories to teenagers, because that's straight from her and straight from her mind.
As the parents of the show, what is your perspective on that? About, did you feel protective? Did you feel like, I don't know if I feel like I want all this out there because it was different for me when I was that age, feeling these same things?
No, I mean, I think it's like, I love that we're really getting into the shit and like putting it out there. I think that's highly important. It's been awesome to be in a room with a lot of people who are younger than me, and I love learning from people who are younger than me. I think it's like I'm at this middle point in life where, you know, I have a lot of experience, but I also have so much to learn, and it's cool to be in a place where people that are younger than you are able to teach you things. It's a new experience for me. I'm used to being the young person in the cast. So that's been really awesome. And I have to say, like, kudos to our producers for being brave enough, because I think that's part of the issue when you're like, oh, why are Broadway shows like kind of like, you know, boring when it comes to teen topics? I think people are scared because, you know, a Broadway show is such an expensive investment up front, and then you just, like, you put everything in and then you don't know what it's gonna be. Whereas even like a TV show, it's also very expensive, but there's a greater chance that it will reach a big audience more quickly. And so I think like that's why Broadway in particularly sometimes seems like slow to be relevant, because it's been in development for so long, and then by the time it gets there, you're like, yeah, we already dealt with this. So I think it's really exciting that they were like, okay, yeah. And I think a lot of that is also because Alanis is very open about like, let's talk about things in a very real way. So I'm on board.
As the veteran cast member, I think the show, there's a cautionary tale in the storylines that are going on with particularly parents, I think, that I hope that any young person coming to see the show will look and go, look, at the core of the problem is they're not communicating to each other. I think the show always comes back around to communication, sharing and the irony, if you will, in sharing your deepest, darkest fears it's the bravest thing you can do. To say to someone, I'm afraid and I'm scared, it's brave. And, you know, isn't that ironic? So I hope, you know, that the young people coming to see the show are going, oh, I don't want to be as confused and afraid and incommunicative as those people are. Our characters are only products of our environment, you know, and ultimately, again, I think the show speaks to this sort of like baseline problem of you know, toxic masculinity in our culture. Like, you know, just bottle it up and deal. You know? And it's not the answer.
So we're supposed to take questions from Twitter, but I'm not sure exactly how that's supposed to happen.
There it is.
Oh. So.
Yeah, it just.
So you guys, if you could switch roles with anyone in the cast, who would it be and why?
Steve Healy. No, it's because, and I'm gonna talk about this because it's important. I tell Sean almost every day how much of a big a fan I am of his because I love him to death. And because he is just trying his best to keep it together. And I feel like there are so many people who are doing the same thing and they're sort of denying themselves peace and satisfaction and basic levels of just getting through it for the sake of others, and he's so giving of himself, and he almost doesn't even realize the importance that he has in this family, because for the Healys, we don't really talk to each other. And although Steve isn't present as much and as often as he wants to be, in Mary Jane, you see the truth of his humanity of just like, I just want someone to speak to me. And I think that is something that a lot of people feel, but they don't get the opportunity to share. In the show, MJ can't communicate for reasons I won't spoil, but Steve is just finally opening up and saying, I thought after all this time together we were done surprising each other, but that's not, there's always something to speak about, and Steve just finally unleashing his heart and saying, tell me what's going on so I can help. That's so important, and that's so powerful, and that's so necessary in the world we live in. It's so easy to deny someone and say, I don't want to talk about this because it's hard, but in order to get through the hardness, you gotta talk about it, and Steve is just the arrowhead of that storyline in the show, and that's why although I may not want to switch roles with him, I want Steve to justice for Steve. Hashtag justice for Steve.
Y'all can start that.
Make a trend.
Anyone else want to say?
I would switch. I want to be Joe. I relate to Joe. So just in the aspect of being a very a teenager dealing with your queer sexuality and not knowing exactly how to express yourself. I don't know. Joe's always been the character that I go, I just wanna. Yeah.
I just want to be Ebony.
Oh my God, yeah.
In life.
I want my body to be able to do those things.
I think we could all agree on that.
Everyone wants to be Ebony Williams.
Derek and I pretty much threatened to swap roles before every single show. So I don't know if.
Yeah, I'm about to go to my scene, and I'm like, you just want to do this one?
It's true.
Sweet.
So, and I think you'd look great in the spaghetti straps and.
Bella's party look.
I know. No.
We get another question? No?
But one of the things that Lauren, you told me that I loved was when Senator Elizabeth Warren came to see the show at ART.
My ride or die.
And I think you guys saw her later during the Pride parade or something like that. But you told me that you would love to be able to sing "Hand in My Pocket" at all her campaign rallies. Of course, you're busy right now, but tell me.
Yeah, but like, I feel like we can make it happen. Elizabeth Warren is truly the love of my life. And I just want to be at her rallies and be able to sing "It's Gonna Be Fine, Fine, Fine." I feel like Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, well, it was a very, I shared that with you because it was a very special moment, I think, for the entire cast. She came to see it in Cambridge, and that was prior to the midterm elections, and she had actually just come back from seeing deportation camps in Arizona, and this is when families were actively being separated and children were not with their mothers and were in literal cages and all of these things, and she was still deeply emotional from that experience and had just come to see our show, which is, a little bit emotional as well.
Light-hearted
It's a
family.
light-hearted romp. But yeah, I think it was very special for all of us to have this person that is, I think, a beacon of light in our country come to see our show. Thank you. And she looked all of us in the eyes, and because in a lot of ways it can feel futile. You think, like, what can I do? How can I be helping? How can I be standing up for what I believe in and what I think our country should be and all these things? I'm just an actor, And she looked us all in the eye and she said, what you are doing helps and matters. And she looked at us and she said, at the time she said, we don't have the House, we don't have the Senate, we don't have the White House, we don't have any of those things right now. All we have is our voices, and you are all using your voices, and that's all that we can do. Woo! So, and a great way to use your voices, folks. Voting! Into a discussion about the election. Sorry!
No, I was just practicing holding the mic like Lauren.
I was
Rockstar hold?
Yes,
He's gotta do the rock.
I'm doing this.
Sometimes I do this too, which is a weird one, but I'll do this in concert sometimes.
Feels natural, yeah.
Yeah, right? It's
Do
just
that.
a little ladle. I don't know.
Well, I just want to say I do agree what you guys are doing is phenomenal, and I'm so happy that you're doing it so many days a week, nights, mornings, being here. So thank you so much.
Joy.